Hello, Year 9. Hope you're all well. Hope you had a lovely bank holiday. We're going to continue today with looking at kind of the rise of the Nazis and how Hitler ends up taking over the Weimar Republic. And today we're going to be looking at the major event that kind of changes the fortunes of the party. As we saw last week, in the aftermath of the Munich Putsch, things weren't looking so great. The party, it wasn't banned as of February 25, and Hitler had been able to raise his profile, but they weren't doing too well in the Reichstag. In the 1928 election, they only won 12 seats. Okay, so even though they spent that period of time, those lean years, reorganising and ironing out ideology, books like Mein Kampf, Hitler kind of reiterates his personal control at the Bamberg Conference 1926. And they kind of sort out the SA and they set up the SS and everything. They massively revamped their organisation and polished the party to become a much more legitimate political force. They don't do so well. Okay, and today we're going to look at what changes that, what causes this very sudden shift in the Nazi Party's fortunes. So the first thing I want to ask you to do today is go on quizzes. I've given you the link here and it's also on Show My Homework, and I would like you to take a quiz just to go back over that material on the lean years and the early years of the Nazi Party, just to check that you're kind of all up to speed on all of that information. And I would like to do that quiz until you can get full marks on it. So you can keep going round and round on there, keep doing that until you've got 100%, so you're totally up to speed on all of that detail. So, by 1928-29, the Nazis, they're doing okay, all right? Hitler's a celebrity thanks to his trial. People know him. The party's become a lot bigger. It's got Gauleiters, those regional branches. As I say, in a lot of ways, it has been massively improved. However, it's a small party, 12 seats, that's not very much at all, and they're a long way from having any real power. However, they've got what we would call infrastructure. They've got the organisation there for if something changes. And something does change. Okay, so just to show you how significant and speedy this change is, in 1928, as I've said, the Nazi Party won 12 seats in the election. Pretty pathetic, not a great performance. Just a few years later, so July 1932, so 3 years after they won 12 seats, they won 230 seats. Look at that difference. Look at that huge increase in support. That made them the biggest party in the Reichstag by quite a long way. Okay, so what happens, what on earth happens in that 3-year period that completely turns things around? That's what we're going to be looking at today. And the event that happened, this crucial moment that causes the Nazis to kind of get back on top, is something called the Wall Street Crash. Okay, and just to kind of give you a bit of a flavour of what this means, obviously the 1920s, we've said they were the golden years of the Weimar Republic. Stresemann was in power. A lot of their problems had been resolved, seemingly. All right, they seem to be doing quite well. This is from 1930. This is an unemployed German woman. I'm a trained shorthand typist, out of work, looking for any kind of work. How bad do things have to be for people to be standing on the street holding signs saying, I am looking for any kind of job, any job you can give me? How desperate do people have to be? And this cartoon here gives you a little bit of a hint as to what causes that problem. I don't know if you recognise this character. He's quite a popular representation of America, Uncle Sam. Okay, so Uncle Sam seems to be sneezing and affecting this little German man in his lederhosen down there. What on earth could that be about? So what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to talk to you about what the Wall Street crash was, try and explain to you why it was so devastating, and then we're going to have a look at how it impacted Germany. Okay, so basically in the space of, a couple of months at the end of 1929, so the autumn, it's pretty much October, as a month is a disastrous month for the Weimar Republic, and that is because of two things. Two things happened that month that kind of signal the end of the Golden Age and start to destroy the Weimar Republic for once and for all. The first thing is Stresemann dies. Okay, this really very sort of gifted and able and competent politician, Gustav Stresemann, who, as we've seen, contributes in an amazing way to the recovery of Germany with organising all those loans and agreements and so on. He dies of a heart attack. Okay, obviously losing a politician who is that good at what he does is a big blow. Okay, then something else happens a little bit later that month, and that is this event, the Wall Street crash, okay, which takes place in America, but it leads to something called the Great Depression, which is an economic crisis all over the world. And we've already seen Germany having economic problems in the early 1920s. With the hyperinflation, this is arguably even worse, and we need to find out why that is today. So, this is Wall Street, just to be clear. Okay, Wall Street is the financial district in New York, and in particular, it is home to the stock exchange. Now, I don't know who out of this class does business studies. I think maybe some of you might do, but I'm sure you've all heard of a stock exchange, even if you're not really sure what it is. So, I'm going to try and explain what it is for you now. Okay, this is what it looks like. This is what you would call the trading floor, where all the stocks are bought and sold. That's the New York Stock Exchange logo, and this is what it would have looked like in 1929. All right, so you can see it's kind of that same angle of this building here. Okay, there's again that big sort of sign for the stock exchange, and this is the trading floor, same as we've got now. Okay, so we're jumping back a couple, good few decades here, but obviously the basic mechanics of the stock exchange work the exact same.
Let's imagine a new coffee company that decides to launch on the market. This launches the company onto the official public market, where any company or individual who believes the business could be profitable might buy a stock. Buying stocks makes those investors partial owners in the business. Their investment helps the company to grow, and as it becomes more successful, more buyers may see potential and start buying stocks. As demand for those stocks increases, so does their price, increasing the cost for prospective buyers and raising the value of the company's stocks people already own. However, if for some reason a company starts to seem less profitable, the reverse can also happen. If investors think their stock value is going to decline, they'll sell their stocks with the hopes of making a profit before the company loses more value. As stocks are sold and demand for the stock goes down, the stock price falls, and with it, the company's market value. This can leave investors with big losses, unless the company starts to look profitable again.
Okay, so I'm going to try and explain to you what we mean by the stock market and how it works, and then hopefully that's going to help you understand the issues that lead to the Wall Street crash and the Depression. So basically what a share is, or a stock and share, they both mean the same thing, is it's a share in a company. Okay, so most big companies, they are not all completely owned by one person, because for your company to do well, you need investment. You need people to give you some money to help your company grow. So I'm going to try and explain those basic mechanics to you now. And the first thing I'm going to do is watch a little video that I found on YouTube, and then I'm going to try and explain it to you myself as well. So hopefully, people that own shares, two bits of explanation combined, because the company should make well, and you get to enjoy some of that profit because you're a shareholder. You own a stake in that company. So, owning a share in a company can be really valuable. Okay, so I took this from the stock market, the American New York Stock Exchange website today. As you can see, these are the most popular stocks that people want to have a share in. So, for instance, Apple. We all know the company Apple. Obviously, they're a very successful company. So, to have a share, just one share in Apple, is $300. All right, because of how profitable Apple is. Everyone wants to get a share in that company, so that means it costs more money. All right, the same. That's why diamonds are expensive, because everyone wants them. All right, if there isn't very much of something, but a lot of demand for it, then it costs more money. All right, as simple as that. So you can see Google, obviously one of the most successful companies in the world, their shares are nearly $1,500 just to buy a single share in Google. And as you can see, today at least, it's Thursday before the bank holiday that I'm filming this. So today, those shares are all going up. They're making lots more money. I don't know what Citigroup is, but they're having a good day. All right. So this is the plus. That's how much the cost of their shares have gone up by today, because their companies are successful. Now, the more successful your company is, the more your shares worth. So, if you were a clever person and you bought a share in Apple back in, I don't know, the 1980s, when the company had only just started and it wasn't as famous as it is, you would have owned a share. You would have bought your share very cheaply because it wasn't a big company then. And if you still own that share now, you'll have made a huge amount of profit. So let's say your share only cost $1 back when Apple was first started up. You've held on to that share all these years. That share is now worth a lot more. Okay, so a successful company, if you have shares in it, it's great. You can make money from that. Okay, now the problem is when a company starts to not do very well. Because if a company's not doing very well, people don't want to have a share in it. Because why would you want to have a share in a rubbish company? So people try and sell their shares, and their shares are therefore worth less because people don't want them. Why would you pay money for something you don't want? So the shares begin to lose their value. Okay, so if you think your company's going to go badly, so let's say, for instance, right now, I wouldn't want to be a shareholder in a pub because lots of pubs are closed down, so they're not making any money right now. I would have sold my shares as soon as possible when lockdown was announced because I wouldn't want to lose any money. Okay, now the trouble with that is if lots of people start selling their shares all at once, the shares lose their value even quicker because everyone's trying to get rid of them. That means that if you owned a share and you paid, I don't know, let's say you bought a share in Apple today and it was $300, and then next week everyone decides they don't like Apple anymore, tries to sell their shares, and they lose their value and suddenly they're worth $50, you've lost $250 because you paid £300 for that share and now you can only sell it for $50. So you can lose your money really, really quickly, okay, if people don't want those shares anymore. And obviously that causes the company to lose money. So it's a real disaster, okay. So what I've got here is, this is from the London Stock Exchange, just to show you today what's going on with that. For some reason, Cineworld is doing very well today. As you can see, the cost of their shares has gone up. JD Sports, doing pretty well. Card Factory, also having a good day, not sure why. Marks and Spencer. In contrast, let's look at who's not been doing very well today. TUI, you might have heard of TUI. They're a holiday company. Unsurprisingly, the holiday company is not doing great right now. Neither is National Express because they're a bus company. All right, so obviously those no one's travelling at the moment, are they? So the holiday company and the bus company, they've lost money. They've lost value because no one wants to have a share in a company that's not making any money. Now, the way this all kind of translates to the Wall Street crash is this kind of happened on a massive scale. Okay, so October 29, share prices started falling. Okay, they started to not be worth as much. Now, if you're a stock market trader and you look at something like this, you look at the stock market, the values, and you see that something you own shares in is losing value, you're going to get rid of it ASAP, because if it falls anymore, you'll lose even more money. So everyone starts to sell their shares. That means that everyone panics. And everyone starts saying, oh my God, you're selling your shares? Oh God, I better do mine too. And then everybody sells their shares. And it gets to the point, so there's a day on the 24th of October 1929, which is called Black Thursday. And on that day, 13 million shares were sold. Right, 13 million shares in companies were all sold in one day. Right, that's a huge number. So, and just to show you how that affects the value, a share that had been worth $20,000 in the morning, by the end of the day, is only worth $1,000. So that's 19 grand worth of loss in a single day. That's enormous. That's 19 grand of money that these companies are losing. That is just disappearing in the space of a few hours. Within 3 days, 12 times what the government had spent in an entire year was lost. Because everyone was selling their shares, which means they were losing their value really, really quickly. Within a week, investors had lost $4 billion in a single week. Now, you can imagine that causes mass panic. So these are some pictures from this kind of period when all the shares were being sold and everyone was panicking. You can see this huge group of people all looking at a newspaper, people queuing outside of Wall Street to kind of find out what's going on. You can see down here, it's kind of totally rammed. One of the really sad stories was that on kind of the day that lots of shares were being sold, some people, they lost so much money because the shares had lost so much value that they lost their savings. And you can see this guy here, he's just jumped out of a skyscraper and killed himself because he's lost so much money in a single day and he doesn't know what to do. And there's something like 11 people in a single day did that. They just jumped out the window because they didn't know what to do. They'd lost so much money. You can see here, this is that evening of Thursday when all the shares were being sold. This poor cleaner is having to mop up. All of this is the ticker paper All right, so you can see what these women are holding here. When the stock market is functioning, all the prices are being constantly updated on this paper that kind of comes out like a receipt. This is at the end of that day when all the shares were being sold. Look at all this paper. Look how quickly those share prices were falling. Okay, and you can see here's a headline here: billions lost. So billions of businesses lost their money, which meant billions of businesses went bust. Now the other problem is lots of banks can be involved in the stock market as well. And if banks are going to go bust, people panic. Because if you've got all your money in a bank and that bank's lost its money, your money's at risk, right? So you can see in these pictures, hundreds of people went to banks to try and get their money out. Take out all of the money they had in that bank just so they could keep it safe. Get out all the cash. The trouble with that is if everyone tries to take their money out at once, the bank can't afford that, so the bank collapses. And if you didn't get your money out, you've lost that money. So people losing millions through the loss of shares, businesses going bust, obviously that leads to lots of people losing their jobs, and then all the banks collapsing, so everyone losing their savings. You can see it was a total disaster for America. All right, it led to this sort of period called the Great Depression, where the economy just completely collapsed. Loads of people didn't have jobs. Many people were homeless. You can see these guys here, they're relying on a soup kitchen, i.e. a kind of free big vat of soup that's being served on the street for homeless people. A lot of people use that to survive. You can see here a whole family. Can anyone find us a home? All right, because they've lost their income. They've lost their job. Why can't you give my dad a job? And so much homelessness, what you start to see is these things called shanty towns. All right, so they were often called Hoovervilles because the president of the United States was called Hoover, Herbert Hoover. And here they are. You see a shanty town. You may associate that with a slum these days, but they existed in sort of first world countries at this time. See these horrible little makeshift houses just made out of whatever they can find because they couldn't afford any rent. So America was in a pretty bad place as a result of this stock market crash. Okay, it caused real problems for them. And that's where this cartoon comes in. Because there's a saying, which is America sneezes and the world catches a cold. Okay, and the reason for that is America at this time was the richest country in the world. All right, and a lot of countries did business with America. Now, if America loses all its money, they're not going to want to do business anymore. They're not going to want to trade anymore, which means lots of other countries are going to lose money as well. And the whole world gets dragged down with them. The whole world gets plunged into this Great Depression, England too. All right, the whole world is suffering at this period because of the lack of money, the lack of jobs, the homelessness and so on. Now, Germany is hit worse than any country. Okay, why is that? Because Germany borrowed a whole bunch of money, didn't they? Stresemann organised all those deals, the Young Plan, the Dawes Plan. That was American loans, American investment. The US banks want that money back because they can't afford to be lending money anymore. They've just had an economic disaster. So the US banks said to Germany, you've got 90 days to pay the lot back with interest. So Germany collapses too. Even worse. They are hit worse than any country in the world. This here is a queue of unemployed people queuing to receive their benefits. Right, we get to the point where in Germany, 1 in 3 people don't have a job. Right, that's crazy. That's a huge percentage. And this can perhaps give you some indication. Sorry, it's my cat. This can perhaps give you some indication of why suddenly extremist parties like the Nazis became viable again. And if you look in the background of this enormous queue of unemployed men, what does that graffiti say? Vote Hitler. Okay, so when this economic disaster hits and we get this enormous range of unemployment and homelessness and misery, which is to say is worse in Germany than anywhere else, extremist parties are able to benefit, which is why it becomes relevant to our story. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to explain to you kind of why this affects Germany so badly, bit by bit, and I'm going to ask you to copy this diagram into your books. So it's kind of a flow chart to show you how the impacts of the Wall Street crash really damaged Germany too. So Wall Street crash happens in Germany, middle of October. That leads to two things. Firstly, it leads to that collapse in world trade because the Americans are no longer buying things. That means other countries can't sell things, and so on. So that's one big issue that comes as a result of the Wall Street crash. The other big issue, for Germany in particular, is the Americans now want their money back. So they're recalling those loans, the Dawes Plan, the Young Plan, all of those agreements made by Stresemann in the 1920s. So that's two big, pretty significant problems that Germany's having to deal with immediately. Loans being called back, trade no longer happening. As trade's no longer happening, that means Germany can't export things anymore. Germany can't sell their goods to other countries because no one's buying. That, plus the US loans, all that American investment being called back, means German businesses have to do one of two things. If your business is suffering, you've got a few options. Number one, you can cut back. So you can cut your wages, you can sack people, you can cut back your business, the costs that it is to run your business by firing people. The other option, of course, is just to close. All right, so businesses, they're going to fire people or they're going to go bust. That's going to lead to a couple of other impacts. Number one being more unemployment. Because if you've been sacked, you don't have a job anymore. If your business has closed, you don't have a job anymore. So either way, we're going to end up with a big rise in unemployment. That means the government's not going to make very much money because less people working means less tax. Because the government makes a lot of its money from taxing people's pay, right? Income tax, you'll have heard of that. You have to pay a certain amount of your salary to the government. If people aren't working, there's no salary to pay. So the government loses out on money. And on top of that, because we've got more unemployed people, we've got to pay out more benefits. We've got to pay out more welfare payments because there's going to be more people that are homeless and having trouble. So we're getting less tax, but we're having to pay more benefits. That's not a good thing. All right, so unemployment in itself leads to poverty, it leads to homelessness, and so on. As I say, we get to 6 million unemployed. That's a third of the country. It's probably even higher than that. So we've got that problem. Less tax, more benefits, means the government makes less money. That means the government's got to put tax up, and it also means the government's got to cut benefits, which makes all of the poverty and the homelessness even worse. Okay, so Germany is in a perfect storm here. The businesses are going bust, they're selling less, they can't export, which means they have to sack their workers, which means the government doesn't make any money, which means the government has to pay more benefits to the sacked workers, which means the government's got to make money somehow, so they put taxes up and they cut the benefits. It's a disaster, okay? And of course, this is a bit of a cycle. Because if people have been made redundant, that means they don't have any money. That means they're poor. If you're poor, you don't buy things anymore. If you don't buy things anymore, businesses go bust. So it just goes round and round and round. Okay, this one economic problem leads to all kinds of other problems. Okay. Essentially, it leads to social problems, it leads to crime, it leads to homelessness, it leads to poverty, and then that, of course, is going to lead to political problems, which we'll talk about next lesson, because when people are sad and desperate and poor, what do? They look to extremists. They look to extremists to help them, and that is a big reason why the Nazis suddenly see themselves getting a whole bunch more support. At the time, the leader of Germany, the Chancellor, was this guy here. He's called Heinrich Brüning. Okay, he's the leader of the Centre Party. He was Chancellor at this time, and he was part of something called the Grand Coalition. Okay, so that's when a variety of parties, including the Centre Party, the Social Democrats, and so on, they all joined together to form something called the Grand Coalition. So a coalition government of 5 different parties. Okay, that's been working quite nicely during the Golden Age when everything's going great. Not so much now because everything's gone wrong. Okay, they can't decide how to fix this problem. Okay, the Weimar Republic can't do anything again. Okay, Brüning, his solution is higher taxes, less benefits. All right, that upsets everybody because the middle classes don't like paying tax and the workers don't like not getting benefits. So he doesn't come out of this very well, and in fact, he gets nicknamed the Hunger Chancellor for being, for dealing with it so badly and overseeing this horrible economic crisis and poverty. And when people are desperate and poor and starving and they look to their government and they see they are doing nothing, that faith in democracy is going to start eroding again. and they're going to start seeing the Weimar Republic once again as weak and incompetent, which means they're going to look elsewhere. So next lesson, we're going to find out a little bit more about that kind of story, about the impacts and how it impacts the political situation and so on, and kind of all the trouble it creates in Germany. But what I'd like you to do today as your final job is go on Seneca, and I've set an assignment for you about the Wall Street crash, and I would like you to have a go at that. And again, as with the quizzes, I would like you to keep doing it until you get full marks. Okay, just so that you can make sure you're completely on top of all of that. And next lesson, as I say, we're going to have a little look more at some of the impacts of this crisis on Weimar Germany. Any questions, guys? Drop me an email, and I'll speak to you soon.